Chapter 24. Wait for it. When Jesse saw the big man start to go down, he told himself he had to be ready, really ready. He bent his knees slightly, bouncing a bit. Sky has one knocked out and the other with a knife at his back. This one is mine to deal with. Jesse was small, but Dylan showed him how to protect himself. Sky ordered the man holding him to let Jesse go, and he laughed at her. Not just a small snicker but a big belly laugh, making fun of her. That made Jesse angry. A hard glint came to the boy's eye, and he set his jaw. Dylan said, "Be patient, wait for it." When the right moment arrived, Jesse was ready. The man's grip loosened from the boy's arm and aimed for the back of his neck. In those few seconds, Jesse sank to his knees, jarring against the pavement, and out of the man's grasp. Sky cried out to him. Jesse tightly wrapped one arm around the man's left knee. He grabbed the unwashed denim of the man's jeans in one hand and didn't let go for nothing. He knew he should feel bad about what he was going to do, but he didn't. Jesse ignored his queasy belly as he got down to business. Jesse clutched the smooth hilt of his knife, pulling it from his belt. He brought his arm back and plunged it into the man's leg above the back of the knee. The man let out a high-pitched scream and backhanded Jesse so hard his head exploded with little dancing lights. Jesse had been hit hard many times before, and blearily danced out of the way as the man dropped to the ground, hands around his bleeding leg. His shrieks ringing in the boy's ears. Jesse glanced at Sky. Her blanched face turned another shade whiter at witnessing Jesse's encounter. He twisted his lip and looked at the ground. Sky hadn't known he was able to do that. Dylan had shown him but told Jesse to keep it to himself because Sky wouldn't like it. He peeked back up at her, then grimaced and shrugged one shoulder. Sky huffed out a breath and mumbled, "Clearly, someone has shown you moves on the sly." But she couldn't object to that now, it had just saved their lives. "I don't know whether to be proud or mortified my son can hamstring a man." She shook her head. "Go to the car, please, Jesse." Once he was safely headed that direction, she turned her attention to Talking Man. "I don't want to hurt you. Your muscle is passed out or crippled. Are we done here?" Her edged voice seemed to cut through his shock at the quick turn of events. "Yes, we are done here," he sniveled. "Walk the way you came and don't come back," she warned. With care, she let him go. She took a few steps backward as she watched him shuffle off between the cars as she instructed. Jesse smiled. He was proud of how tough Sky sounded. He kept an eye on the man, but Jesse's tension eased when he saw the man would not turn and fight. She backed away along the side of her car, gripping her knife and grabbing the map off the hood as she went. At one point, Sky stepped quickly to avoid the attacker as he rolled around on the road holding his leg. Once Sky entered the Jeep, Jesse felt stress rolling off her in waves. She bit her lip as she jumped onto the seat and locked the doors. The clock blinked to life when Sky fired up the Jeep's engine. Jesse's mouth dropped. Not even 10 minutes had gone by. So much had happened so fast. Sky backed the car out of the snarl of stopped traffic. From the right side, a group of about 20 sick came out of the woods. She closed her eyes and slowly shook her head. "What am I doing?" she mumbled. Sky braked the vehicle and watched the sick amble out of the forest for a moment. She stared down at her trembling hands and turned to Jesse. He looked at her before staring out the car window at the sick. He'd never seen them this close before. They were uglier than he'd imagined. Sky pulled on Jesse's shoulder and soon wrapped him in her embrace. Her silent tears hit him above his collar. There was none of the noisy mess that usually accompanied weeping, only the tiny splashes on his neck. Jesse was as still as possible, wiggling only when he couldn't help himself. Dylan told him that some women cry a lot, especially when things get rough. They weren't sure if Sky cried more than other women. Neither one had spent a whole lot of time with girls, but compared to the 3 men, she did. Dylan also told Jesse that Sky seemed to appreciate a hug when she cried. That was weird to Jesse because when he cried, he wanted everyone to leave him alone. But that is what Dylan said, and he didn't like hugs either. Jesse wasn't sure why Dylan told him all this but reckoned it was because they would deal with a lot of crying women now. Once Jesse thought he could no longer breathe, he pulled away and waited while Sky wiped her face. "What are we gonna do now?"
Sky put her arm on the steering wheel, wincing as she did so. and looked in the rearview mirror, then out the front window. It was a miracle she and Jesse had gotten away. There was still over half of the trip to go, if they continued on, and no indication it would be any easier or any safer. Her heart sank as she faced the reality she may never reach her family, never see them again. Sky squeezed her eyes shut. The Coles were right. She had trusted the brothers to show her skills, but she had not believed them in so many other ways. Why had she thought she knew better? She didn't. She heaved a heavy sigh as she turned back to Jesse. "We're going back. I was wrong, and they were right. We'll never get through this. We shouldn't have left." Tears ran down Sky's face as she put the car in gear and drove over the bumpy median and away from her family.